No. Your worship.
Any additions from council? Councilor Coogan?
I'll move the agenda adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion on the floor. All in favor? It's carried. Our agenda. Adoption of the meeting minutes from July 19th, 2023. Council, any additions, omissions, corrections? Not seeing any. Get a motion. Councilor Wilhelm.
Motion to adopt the meeting minutes of council meeting for July 19th, 2023 as presented.
Okay, again, motion on the floor. Discussion, call it a question. All in favor? It's carried. Move on. Public hearing at 10, a little early for that. Let's go down to bylaws 5.1. Presenter says Joan. Morning, Joan.
Morning. Good morning, Council. In front of you, we have Bylaw 60523, amending the schedule of fees. At the Governance and Priorities meeting on July 12th, 2023, Council had directed administration to bring forward to Council the change in fees for natural resource extraction from $2,500 to $6,000. So that is the bylaw that's in front of you this morning, as well as it had been requested as to review of Lac-Saint-Anne County's fee at the $50,000. In talking to their my counterpart, their manager, what they had indicated was that the justification for their fee was requirement of third-party engineering review that they do. Administrative review, much like ours. Generally, these applications are 200 to 400 pages big, and it does take significant time to run through it. And then in their instance, they generally have quite a few subdivision and development appeal with respect to the applications, which has led for them significant legal fees. So as we all know, that legal fees are not cheap and can run up things fairly significantly. So that was their justification for the $50K. The difference between, I guess, us and Lac-Saint-Anne County is that our natural resource extraction is done by a direct control district, in which that appeal mechanism isn't there. So we're allotting public participation through the public hearing process as a direct control in both the rezoning to that district, and then as a result of the development permit application, again, council hosts that public hearing. So there's lots of opportunity for the public to be involved and have their input before approval is given on an application. Whereas with Lac-Saint-Anne, theirs is an open process in which that appeal process can occur. So just if council's interested, I brought the bylaw forward to change that fee from $2,500 to $6,000 as had been discussed at the Governance and Priorities meeting.
Councilor Dean.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So, Joan, can you just clarify that process that exists in Lac-Saint-Anne? So a development project would come forward and then...
So depending on their zoning, because it could be a permitted or discretionary use, whereas ours is a direct control district. So, and then under the, if it was discretionary, it would go to their municipal planning commission, and their municipal planning commission would approve it, and or if it was discretion, or permitted, sorry, administration would approve it, which then you of course advertise it. There's the 21-day appeal period, and then adjacent landowners have the opportunity to appeal that, and or the applicant can appeal it as well, depending on the conditions that are placed upon them.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Coogan.
Through the chair to John. Obviously, you can pick that $6,000 number out of a hat. that's designed to cover any of the costs currently that would be incurred in that process.
Through the chair to Mr. Kilkin, or Councillor Kilkin, sorry. Yes, we had done an analysis based on myself, Peter, and Brenda's time. Our truck to go out and do an inspection, review, also included in particular with the Pride Valley area, having the committee, having council, review that document, cost for the public hearing, all of that was taken into account.
Thank you. Council, anything else from council? Seeing none, does anybody want to make a motion? Councillor Dean.
So I'd move that council gives first reading of bylaw 605/23, amending schedule of fees.
Alright. Motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Down to second reading. Anybody wants to give a motion? Councillor Wilhelm.
A motion that council give second reading of bylaw 605/23, amending schedule of fees.
And motion on the floor. Any discussion from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Councillor Kuhlken.
I'll move that council proceed to third and final reading of bylaw 605/23, amending schedule of fees.
Okay, again, motion on the floor. We need unanimous to go to the third reading. Call the question. All in favor? It's carried. We had unanimous and in a final motion. Councillor Wilhelm.
Motion that council gives third reading of bylaw 605/23, amending schedule of fees.
Motion on the floor. Discussion on the motion. Not seeing any. Call the question. All in favor? And that one is carried. Thank you very much. I have a delegation from the town of Mayerthorpe. We get to. Good morning. So we'll start here. I'm not sure if you know everybody around the table here, so I'll give a quick introduction. Start there, Mr. Frank.
The ladies know me.
I'm Carrie.
Bruce Prestige, councillor for Blue Ridge area.
John Burrows, councillor for Whitecourt West.
Dave Cush, Councillor for Ensemble.
Peter Kilpin, councillor for Goose Lake, Raymond River.
Jeremy Wilhelm, Whitecourt East.
And Alan Dean, Whitecourt Central.
And the ladies know me also.
There you go. Thank you very much. If you guys want to start, we're waiting for you.
You betcha. My name is Jennifer Sunderman. I'm with the town of Mayerthorpe, and this is Karen St. Martin. She's also with the town of St. Martin. Town of Mayerthorpe, sorry. We're coming to speak with you today about West End Bus program and what that entails, the enhancement portion of this. We have been approved for a grant that is federally funded, and we are looking to add a one-day program that would help Mayerthorpe residences, Blue Ridge residents, and also Sangudo residents to come into the Whitecourt area, and that is for all ages. We also have included in the funding program the bus shelters with that would include ashtrays and benches, and there is also a another component I'm missing here, facility. Yes, that is the component I'm missing. Facility to house the vans for the West End bus program, and we are also doing an electric vehicle that we're looking to purchase as well. So right now we've been approved for that funding, and we are looking to get an approval letter from the Woodlands County, and we're hoping that you guys would be on board with that. And the funding is 80% funded. So with that, I do have some numbers here. There was a letter that was given to, that was mailed out, but I do have some preliminary numbers here. So the budget, basically, we, just back up just a minute here. I'm looking for my approval letter and I'm sorry. I'll just give you a roundabout number here, but it's about 594,000 is what we've been approved for. Vehicle will cost approximately 110 to 130,000. The shelters, they're going to cost, I do believe we have that number here. Give me one sec. The glass shelters are approximately 7,350, and those shelters would go in one each, and one in Mayerthorpe, one in Sangudo, and one in Blue Ridge. We're looking to get a more of a decisive answer from the committee so that we can actually get a decision on the location. When we applied for it, we applied for the libraries, to have those bus shelters at the libraries, but again, it needs to be on municipally owned land, as well as the facility. We're also trying to get a decision from the committee to find out where we want that location for the facility. The facility is approximately, I do believe we've looked at, in the application, it's 2,300 square feet, and we are throwing around the idea of maybe reducing that size, so there could possibly be a scope of change that we need to apply for, as well as we're also looking at possibly changing the electric vehicle to a hybrid vehicle. Again, that would be a scope of change that would happen. Also, we are, I think I've missed anything else.
Electric vehicle charging stations.
Oh, the electric vehicle charging stations, yes. The approval also does the help with the facilitating getting them put in of the electric vehicle charging stations, and again, one in Blue Ridge, one in Sangudo, and another one in Mayerthorpe. So, and that could also have a potential of a revenue base as well, opening it up to the public. So does council have any questions for us? I'm sure there's a few floating around.
Sorry, Councillor Wilhelm.
With the chair, see a couple questions. The last, you just commented at the scope of change, would that, or change of scope, sorry, would that affect the amount of money that you would need from Woodlands County? Like if you, I'm assuming that change of scope would be to reduce costs, correct?
Not necessarily. If we can provide to the powers that be, so the federal government, why we're doing the scope of change. Like for an example, if we're doing trying to get the hybrid vehicle versus the electric vehicle, we're having difficulties right now because of the simple fact that it's like 2 years out before we can actually get a vehicle provided to us. And the problem with that is we only have a 2-year window with this agreement from the start date to the end date. And so with that, we would be out of our agreement, and we wouldn't get the funding for the vehicle portion, right? And we don't want that to happen. So we would have to provide in that change of scope, when we would do that application, we would have to provide them, something from the dealership showing that it's going to be 2 years out. So that's the reason why we're going to try and get the hybrid vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my second question was, you had alluded to it when you first started presenting, like a one-day program. Can you just extrapolate on what the one-day program would be, the benefits to the municipality?
Well, there's several benefits. Number one, it's not just for seniors, it's for all ages. It could be, the one-day program could be utilized where you pick up your residents from either Blue Ridge, Sangudo, or Mayerthorpe and bring them into Whitecourt. So whether that be for doctor's appointments, whether that be for shopping, whether that be for, so it's bringing in, it could possibly bring in economics to the area.
So the idea would then to run basically a route from Mayerthorpe, Blue Ridge, Whitecourt type
Yes.
situation?
Yes.
Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair, I have more than one question. First question is, why is the town of Mayerthorpe presenting this, not the West End Bus Committee,
Presenting the actual application.
this meeting?
This meeting? It's due to the fact that the application was put through the town of Mayerthorpe. We are the main contact for this application process.
Second question. The board has not voted in favor of doing this yet. So I think you're jumping the gun here.
Chair, through to Councillor Prestige, we do have letters of support from, when the application was done, we do have letters of support from Woodlands County as well as from Lac St. Anne County.
There's a letter of support to apply for the grant. But now, the way the grant is written, we have to buy an electric vehicle, which the board has said will not work in our area. There's so many things that the board has not decided on yet. So, like, to me, you jump the gun, the board has to come up with what their recommendation is before we do any of this stuff.
Chair, through to Councillor Prestige, we do have, the counties have provided the letters of support, and I do believe in the letters, it does say that there's financial support there, as well as, to answer the question, it is more for,
If I may.
yes, thank you.
Reeve, Council, Administration, good morning. So the town of Mayerthorpe is the managing partner for the project. And the West End Bus Committee approved making application to the federal program for this funding and for this project. At this point in time, the federal government requires that we enter into the funding agreement. And there's a deadline which is fast approaching for that agreement. We won't proceed with the project until the agreement is in place and the funding is secured. So at this point in time, we require the partners to commit to their 20% funding contribution, but that is based on the West End Bus Agreement. So for Woodlands County, that would be 25% of that 20%. And yes, Councillor Prestige is correct. Decisions still need to be made, and a recommendation still needs to come forward from the West End Bus Committee on the specifics before we proceed with the actual construction and purchasing of the supplies and materials.
So,
One
and
more there.
on the motion, the second motion, you want $30,000 from the reserve fund for replacement of a bus. So how are we gonna pay that $30,000 back? If we look back at the last financial records, our costs have been going up. So I think it's 2025 budget, there's only $250 a year going into the call it,
Reserve?
the reserve. So how are we gonna pay that $30,000 back? It'll take,
I can answer that. If you look at the third motion in this, it's a third motion for council to add that money to a budget line for 2024. Councillor Burrows?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So through the chair, good morning. Yeah, I just want to clarify that letter of support was back in 2021, I think, from the county. And it's a letter of support in principle, and in principle means that there's no funding attached to it specifically. So just that we get that clarification out of the way. In 2021, picture was a little bit different. I see the more that I've looked at this electric vehicle idea, and this kind of comes down to the way we talk about rural broadband. I'm going to compare the two so that you don't lose me here. We kind of look for a solution to some of our problems, and right now that carbon problem is a solution that they're looking for, and I think the electric vehicle is going to be it. And it may be in the urban centers, but I don't think in the rurals the electric solution is going to work. In everything, I think there's going to be multiple pieces of it. So when you compare it to broadband, you know, where it makes sense, you put in fiber. Where it doesn't make sense, you go two-way, and then there's satellite for the remote. I think this busing thing and vehicle transportation is going to be much the same, in the fact that the electric charging station, and not only that, we've got a horrendous problem with our grid right now. If we start electrifying more and more and pulling, I don't know if people understand the amount of actual power that these things are pulling. This is a 600 volt, 45 amp, I think, at 600 volts for a phase 3 charging station. It is huge power to charge some of these big pieces of equipment. So I would rather stay with equipment that is tried and true, and as a municipality, I don't like the idea of us taking the risk of some of that cutting edge technology. I appreciate it, but I'm just not I'm not a fan of it. That's all I had.
Councillor Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Not that I want to get too deep into the details, but I did have some questions, or a question about the slow charging station. So see, there's three. It looks like they are each going to cost roughly $15,000. Why would there be a slow? Let me back up. The vehicle is going to be housed at a facility where? Mayerthorpe?
Chair, through to Councillor Dean, it is, that location has not been determined yet.
Okay.
However, there have been some locations
Sure.
that have been
Okay.
brought up, but again, they have to be municipally owned.
Yep.
And we are trying to have it in the location in Mayerthorpe, as it is centrally located, you know, for our drivers.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. So what my question is the other two charging stations, they're slow charging station. How long does it take, and what's the practicality of having a vehicle sitting there for that length of time versus back in the shop, if you will, overnight?
Chair, through to Councillor Dean, that is mainly the charging station would be, it all depends on how long they want to get charged for. So again, if they can sit there for 2 hours, they could sit there for 10 minutes. Again,
Okay.
it's up to the purchaser, I guess is how I want to word that. But these charging stations, again, they could bring in a revenue.
Mm-hmm.
We've been looking into that. The committee has been looking into that as well. But the idea behind it was so that if the drivers were picking up while they were there, they could charge while they were picking up the people.
Okay. So that short period of time,
short
15,
period of
20
time,
minutes.
15, 20 minutes, whether they're
It's gonna
there.
put a little juice in.
They put a little juice in and they're good
Gotcha.
to go.
Okay,
Yeah, and
thank you.
it is a slow charging station. It's not the fast charging.
Okay.
Councillor Kuchen first, then Councillor Wilhelm.
Yeah, I just have a question on the life cycle. When we go as municipalities to spend, in this case, almost $750,000, one of the things that I don't see in the budgeting process is what our commitment would be down the road to keep that status quo or to enhance it or whatever. And I would really like to understand a little better what our commitment as a county would be in the life cycle of that particular project. And the reason I say that is because traditionally when we apply for some of these grants, their intentions are really good, but we don't consider the continuous cost of what's going to happen down the road. So that's just kind of a question and something that I'd like to see.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right through to Councillor Klugen. We have anticipated, we know what the 1 day a week operating cost is estimated to be, and yes, that will be an ongoing operational cost. We also know that the charging stations are a potential revenue source, as each supplier has given us revenue outlook, which is in excess of the expenditures. So there is a potential revenue stream there that would feed back into the operating budget. As far as building maintenance, repairs, and life cycle expenditures, we, again, this will have to be a discussion for the West End Bus Committee and a recommendation come forward to councils. But currently, the West End Bus Committee and the municipalities are paying rent to house the existing buses at different locations throughout Lac-Saint-Anne County. And we're currently paying the operating costs on those facilities as well as repairs and maintenance. So the thought process was that we would reallocate that money to the operating costs of the facility. And it's the same money, but it's reallocated within the budget for this purpose. There's also cost savings with the drivers. Currently they're having to drive, most of them are centrally located in Mayerthorpe. They're having to drive out to these locations in Lac-Saint-Anne County. It's time, it's money and expenditure to have these drivers drive and pick up these buses, drive them back, fuel up, clean, maintain, and then go to the destinations for which the West End Bus Program is operating. So we definitely think that there is, and we can do a forecasted operations plan, but we think we can take existing expenditures and reallocate to offset future costs.
Okay, one more, Councillor Wilhelm, and then we're getting close to our delegate for public hearings. We'll have to.
Just a couple questions through the chair to the presenters. When is the deadline for the program so that you have your funding behind it? I didn't see it anywhere in the
Chair to Councillor Wilhelm, the project start date is, we need to have the agreement signed by October 1st, 2023.
And then secondly, you had discussed potentially changing the scope to a hybrid vehicle. How does that affect your grant funding? Like, I mean, I'm assuming the grant is all around the charging stations and the electric vehicle. If you're switching to a hybrid, you don't really need charging stations for a hybrid vehicle. So does that completely change the scope and then would completely change our funding contribution to it, right? Like it would have a significant impact to your overall budget.
Chair through to Councillor Wilhelm, that is something that unfortunately I can't really, I don't have a crystal ball is how I'm gonna word that, but you've probably pegged that right. It could possibly impact our funding. But where I'm gonna go with this is that we are trying to make decisions, and again, it would come from the committee whether or not that whether or not we move forward with an electric vehicle or whether or not we move forward with a hybrid vehicle.
And just to,
But I
and
have
just
one
to
more.
follow that up, like I think the idea behind this program is awesome. This could bring huge value to the municipality. But saying that, I have to agree with Councillor Prestige a little bit. It does kind of seem a little bit putting the cart before the horse to ask for money when you don't actually know what you're going to be spending the money on yet. Is it, knowing that we have that October 1st deadline, I believe you said, would it not be more prudent to bring it to the committee and get approval on what the final project is before asking the municipality for money for a project you're not even sure what you're doing yet? Go ahead.
Mr. Reeves, through to Councillor Wilhelm. I'm the writer of the grant application. So I'll just give you some background on that. When we applied for this grant, we obtained 3 quotes on a building and 2 different sized buildings. And in discussion with the West End Bus Committee, I asked them, do you want me to apply for the larger building or the smaller buildings? So their direction to administration was apply for the larger building, then we'll make a decision. We can go with the smaller building. So there's some capacity for funds to be reallocated to other portions of the project. In addition, we budgeted in the budget we submitted with the application a 10% contingency. So we do have that contingency as well that can be reallocated or used in areas that may come slightly over budget or under budget. If I may speak to some other questions that were raised earlier, Mr. Reeve, the electric vehicle charging stations. If we do transition to a hybrid vehicle, which has a much greater distance to travel and can be used for other purposes, the electric vehicle charging stations still have great value to the municipalities. For example, your tourism, your target market is Edmonton. A lot of these people are coming from Edmonton to the Hardluck Falls or out to the Grizzly Trail or wherever it is, and they're driving these vehicles. So to be able to have those charging stations available for them, it enhances your attraction to your tourism, as well as your residents. If they're investing in these vehicles, and I get it, it may not be the oil field or the larger industries that are utilizing these vehicles, but your general public are starting to invest in these vehicles. So having the infrastructure there, very close to Highway 43, which is Canamex trade corridor from Mexico to Alaska, is kind of what we were looking
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That we're just running over our time here a little bit. So, who says this? Go ahead, Councillor.
Chair, I'll make a motion that council accept a delegation from the town of Mayerthorpe represented on the West End Bus Rural Transit Enhancement Project as information.
Hey, motion on the floor. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And it's passed. Got a second motion on books here. Councillor Dean.
I'll move that council approves a letter to the town of Mayerthorpe advising the West End bus replacement reserve to be used in the amount of $30,647, Woodlands County's portion for the start of the West End Bus Rural Transit Enhancement Project in 2023.
Okay, motion on the floor. Any discussion from council? Councillor Wilhelm?
I'm only gonna just reiterate, I believe the idea behind this is really solid, and I think it could bring value to the community. I'm a municipality, but as I said before, it sure feels like a cart before the horse thing. We're asking for $30,000 without an actual fixed budget, and it seemed to have bypassed the committee a little bit here. I think this is awesome, but I think I'm not quite ready to commit.
Councillor Dean?
So in the event that, so the question is back to the representatives, in the event that a grant was denied for whatever reason, this money that's we're pledging to put into reserve would not have transferred legally to the West End Bus Committee. It would still be within our frame of network to deal with it. Okay.
Yeah, Your worship, members of council, the money is in their reserve, the West End Bus Committee. We're just borrowing it to pay for the application, and then we're replenishing it in 2024 if the council's in agreement.
Thanks for that clarification.
We have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion on the motion?
Just one thing, when we talk about this project, cause so, if you go back to the origins of the West End bus, from what I gather, the West End bus was designed to allow seniors access to services so that they could go for doctor's appointments. This was more of a seniors target, is that correct? A seniors targeted type of service level?
Council, pardon me, read through to Council Burrows, the original program was, we're adding on a one-day program that will include all ages.
So, and I guess there's a huge scope creep here in, adding the electric charging stations and adding all of these other things. They might be a good idea, but I don't know if they necessarily fit within that type of support out of Woodlands County to develop things in another municipality that way. The way that the original scope was, I fully supported it. So anyway, that's it.
Go ahead.
Mr. Reeve, through to Councillor Burrows. You're correct, the original program was geared towards seniors attending appointments and specialist appointments, but the program has changed over the years. So it has also changed in respect to, it has a recreation component, a cultural component now for seniors as well and their companions. And this has all derived from a regional transportation study that was completed several years ago. And that was in partnership with Woodlands County and Lac St. Anne County and the Alexis Nakota Sioux Nation. So consultants were hired, they spoke with your municipality, Lac St. Anne, Alexis Nakota Sioux Nation, as well as citizens and industry. And in that study, this is what we heard, was that people needed public transportation from these locations to more of a regional center rather than going to Edmonton, that they could access services in a bigger center like Whitecourt. And so that's the foundation of where this has all come from.
I'm gonna take one more question.
I just wanted to add that the help seekers report that came through our community services committee said the exact same thing.
Okay.
Just, I gotta say something.
All right, so then we've gotta get moving here.
This one-day program was lightly talked about at the board level. It has not been approved by the board level. So if the board doesn't approve it, it's not gonna happen.
All right, with that, I'll call the question. We got a motion on the floor here still. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, so moving on then, motion 3
Not required, your worship.
will not be required. With that, I guess thank you very much. We are a couple minutes behind. We do have a public hearing. Just get this here. I'm going to apologize. This is my first time running a public meeting, so they kind of set me up with a bit of a script to kind of get through this. Start off, my name's Dave Cush. I'm currently the Reeve Woodlands County and Councillor for Division 1 in Salmo. Just for the members of the public, I'd like to start off by introducing the rest of council. Start with Councillor Dean.
Alan Dean, councillor for Whitecourt Central.
Jeremy Wilhelm, Whitecourt East.
Peter Cookin, Deep Lake, Freeman River.
John Burrows, councillor for Whitecourt West.
Bruce Preston, Councillor for Blue Ridge.
And we get into the public hearing, so you know that each person wishing to speak will have up to 5 minutes to make a presentation to council. Members of the public wishing to speak in relation to the public hearing subject will need to state their full name, identify their address within Woodlands County, and whether they're speaking for themselves, sure that is, another person or a group. I would also like to note that during a public hearing, we are reminded to respect the views of everyone and allow each individual time to speak without interruption. All discussions of council or members of council, administration, and the public shall be directed through the chair. Council does not debate this matter during the public hearing, and the decision regarding whether to grant the bylaw further readings will be dealt with after the close of the public hearing. Public hearings are to allow for input on facts and offer the public an opportunity to provide their feedback. They are intended to be a Q&A period, and questions and comments must be limited to items concerning the specifics of the subject of the public hearing. So with that, I'd like to declare the public hearing for bylaw 577/21, road closure, open at 10:11. And I'd like to ask the Director of Infrastructure there, Mr. Bichond, to provide the purpose and background of the hearing, please.
Your Worship, members of council, at the June 7th, 2023 council gave first reading and directed the administration to schedule public hearing for roadway closure bylaw 577/21 to close and sell a portion of the road allowance 2196 EU within Southwest 1862-6 west of the 5th. The MGA section 22 allows council by means of bylaw to close the whole or part of any road. Policy 6112 outlines the procedures which is attached to the RFD. The two applicants own property each on the opposing sides, and it's the applicant's desire to close the road allowance, and each of them purchasing one half of the closed portion of the road. The summary was referred to all agencies to provide comments, including Alberta Transportation. At the time of the writing, we did not have a reply from them, but it was received yesterday, and they have no issues. Apex Utilities Inc. Identified they would require a URL. However, once it was received, it was identified that it would not be within the portion to be closed. The public hearing was advertised for 2 consecutive weeks, and letters were sent out to landowners. And all correspondence is attached to the RFD. The recommendation is that council takes following steps. The chair declares the public hearing bylaw 577/21 closure and sale of the portion of roadway 2196 EU within Southwest 1862-06 west of the 5th open. The Director of Infrastructure provides the purpose and background of the public hearing. The chair provides council an opportunity to ask questions related to the proposed bylaw 577/21. The chair invites the applicant representatives to provide comments on any new or additional information on the application. The chair asks for any written or verbal submissions on the proposed bylaw. The chair provides council the opportunity to ask any additional question relating to bylaw 577/21. And the chair closes the public hearing for bylaw 57/21.
Okay, with that, any questions from council, comments from council? Councillor Cooligan.
Yeah, through the chair to Andre. When the individuals purchase that, each half of that property, they assume the responsibility. The road's closed, it's no longer we no longer have any commitment to anyone using that.
Through the chair, Council Colkin. So the next step will be administration will seek independent appraisal on the land. The land will be divided. It'll be offered for sale. Once they purchase it, the county has no longer any liability to that portion of land.
Thank you.
Anything else from council? Seeing none, just ask administration if there were any other written or verbal submissions for the bylaw.
Your worship, as I mentioned, we did receive the Alberta Transportation comment, and they had no issues. In the Apex utilities, the URL will not be required within the area we're looking at closing.
Hey, moving down, I'd like to call upon anybody from the public who's here who'd like to speak in favor of the bylaw. Would like to? Please.
One of the property owners, it's Chris and John Ellens from Angels Valley. Would you like us to speak at this point in time?
Yes, if you'd like to.
Basically, in terms of history, the road closure, 3.14 acres approximately in question was offered to Angels Valley some time ago. We're not sure why we didn't proceed at that point in time, but anyways, that process was delayed, so we accept that the road should remain closed and not be used by the public or by the county. Our neighbor Valley is in agreement with the road closure. We had an agreement that we would support their proposed subdivision on the east end of their property in exchange for the right to purchase or cede a piece of our property so they could gain access to their subdivision. So we had no problems with that. I think that's a separate issue from the road closure, but that was an agreement. So we would be in agreement to maintain the roadway as part of our walking trail system, and we would landscape it as such. So we would use that existing property just to incorporate it into our walking trails. Again, it protects the purpose of the property as a quiet place to have a resort and get close to nature, get close to God, and they do that on the walking trails. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak in favor? I see none. Anybody who'd like to speak opposed? Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for all the presenters for their questions and feedback related to the matter. I'd like to close it off. Any additional questions from council? So none. Move down. Any final remarks from administration, Mr. Prashant?
Your worship, no.
Again, desk. Does council have any final questions related to bylaw 577/21 before we conclude the hearing? Seeing no more, I'd like to declare the public hearing for bylaw 577/21 closed at 10:18. And thank you very much for everybody who showed up. Right, moving on. I guess we'll, council want to take a quick break before we move on? Right, we'll take a break, say till 10:30, just over 10 minutes. let me know when we're good to go.
Okay, good.
That was quick.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, back here just after 10:30. Start at 7.1, representation for, what's this, council representative appointment for the CFYE, Community Futures Yellowhead East.
Your worship, members of council, the CFYE is looking for a member from Woodlands County. They meet every third Thursday from 1 PM for approximately 3 to 4 hours.
And we've had this discussion a few times. Is there anybody on council who has any interest or availability to be able to sit on these boards? I guess I could put my name in. It just, I do have a couple other boards on Thursday, like our West End bus, that would interfere with some of the meetings, as long as that wouldn't pose too many issues, but I could probably make at least half of them. Councilor Will,
I think they would probably just like
some representation.
sometimes. And we do have an alternate for this, correct? So, yeah, you're the alternate. And I am the alternate. Unfortunately, it's like 1 o'clock on Thursday is I'm at work, so almost every day, so it is an issue, but I think they would just like to have anybody to come and participate.
Councilor Dean?
I seem to recall that one of the candidates might have been Councillor Williams, because I know Tuesdays were a problem from the Ag Service Board, and he was wondering if we could schedule meetings on Thursday. And I believe the last time we discussed this, he wasn't present for that meeting, if memory serves me. So he might be a candidate for an alternate. And then maybe between the two of you, you could work that out.
Yeah, we can definitely have a discussion with him.
First step, obviously,
We see him,
is to
but,
have a designated.
If nobody else has the ability to put their name forward to this, I will, I'll put my name down as representation on the board. Councilor Dean?
Yeah, I move the council appoints Reeve Cush to the Community Futures Yellowhead East Board.
Any discussion on that motion? See none. Call the question, all in favor? Okay. Moving on, 7.2, amended draft policy 6204, emergency relief assistance and catastrophic events. Hello again, Joan.
So council at the regular meeting of July 19th had passed a motion with respect to bringing back policy 6204. This was as a result of discussion around tax relief item, and then this particular policy was brought up that perhaps it could be tweaked and looked at for possible funding for individuals that have had a catastrophic event. So the original policy was established in 2008. The purpose of it was essentially or when council reviewed this and adopted it for the event of someone losing their home due to fire. The county would provide them $1,000 essentially so we could get a hotel, get some essentials, you know, and then move forward with dealing with their insurance and whatever else. And then in 2012, it was amended to then include, because often it was seemed to be that mobile homes were the ones that were being destroyed. So they included an additional amount of another $1,000 for landfill fees, so that they could take that destroyed mobile home and put it to the landfill. So administration, per council's direction or request, we looked at the policy to include for all catastrophic events. So we identified a purpose of the policy. We included definitions for clarification, eligibility requirements for it. So we've created an application form as well for catastrophic events. to include specific events like fire, wildfire, floods, weather, and whatever weather events or other natural disaster might occur. They'd have to be in good standing with the municipality. Have not received other financial assistance from the municipality. So, for example, when we did the flood event and we had people out of their homes, we provided them with vouchers for food and accommodations and all that. Would be one application per household, per property, per lifetime. They have to be over the age of 18 with proof of ownership or say a leasee of the property. And then we've, like I say, included an application form, which must be submitted within essentially 72 hours of the event. And we've removed the clause with respect to, in the case of a mobile home that's lost, that's been destroyed, and would pay the landfill disposal fees. In this particular event, I know that the county had waived those fees. So we're thinking that, you know, if we give them $1,000, do we really need to be assisting them further by giving them additional funds when the county has gone ahead and waived those fees in this particular instance with the flooding. So also further to council's motion above, corporate services did provide in the package possible implications of the new policy on the budget. So that was attached. Essentially the budgetary impact relief assistance for catastrophic events. If you looked at the number of residents in the municipality, and I know this is probably looking at it at a grandiose, is that every resident destroyed, it would cost the county about $2,042,000 to cover if you gave each residence $1,000. So I don't know if council's got any questions with respect to the particular policy that administration has divvied up. It's a matter of if you're looking to approve this particular one, or, you know, want to just leave it alone and it remain as was.
Councilor Prestige.
Through the chair to John, like in the case of the floods, if somebody's house was flooded, but it wasn't destroyed, they wouldn't be eligible, right?
Correct.
It's like if their house gets wiped off the foundation.
Through the chair to Councillor Prestige, so it damaged to the point where it's not livable. Because there are instances where, you know, it fills it totally up with water, and if they don't have insurance to cover that or whatever, you know, they're out of the house because they can't live in it. Eligibility would be there. But if the basement fills up, you know, and the top level is still livable. Yeah. So there's different factors that would have to be looked at, and that's why we've included an application form with the policy.
Anything else from council? For Burrows, there we go. It's been a long morning.
So I kind of brought up this idea with the tax relief idea, and maybe I needed to do a better job explaining it, but the idea that I had at the time was that we have people that pay into the municipal coffers as in the form of taxes, and if you've got $3,000 or $4,000 that you've paid in as taxation that you've contributed to during the year, and you need a few $1,000s to float you through a period of time, the idea was to make that money available to you, because in doing what we did in the last meeting, so if you didn't pay your taxes, you got no penalties. If you did pay your taxes, well, you paid your taxes. So you had no access to any of that money. So it was kind of an unequal thing. The only thing that was going to cost the municipality was kind of the interest on that money. And I wouldn't include penalties in that because what we're talking about is just kind of being out that money. That was why I wanted to go in that way. I think we get into a dangerous precedent when we go wildfire and flood on the whole thing. Flood is still going to be fairly local. I can't see woodlands getting wiped off the map by a flood, but a wildfire I can. And typically in these types of things, wildfires and they actually exclude. So I don't know. I would like to see this kicked back to the governance and priorities meeting, and see if we can kind of hash through this a little bit, because I don't know that we quite got the intent in here, and that kind of financial risk to the municipality isn't a good thing either in a time, because there's a lot of expenditures that are outlaid by the municipality, not just individuals too. It's something that affects the municipality from an infrastructure point of view as well. So there's huge taxation policies here, or taxation impacts that are relevant to this. So I would be happy taking this back to governance and priorities and seeing if we can kick this around a little bit and figure out something a little more finite.
Councillor Wilhelm and Councillor Booten.
Just to support Councillor Burrow's comments, I agree. I think this is too potentially broad a scope, and it probably came to that because we asked you to come up with a policy on very short notice. I think we potentially missed the boat here for this last catastrophic event, but having a discussion on how we have a policy for future ones might be good. I think the focus should be looking to the future for potential events and then create a policy around that as opposed to trying to fix something that's already happened.
Councillor Booten?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to Joan for actually going to the bottom end of this whole thing, because I'm almost thinking you're a bit like a teacher in testing us here, because when I look at the funding options, I could never support motion 2. So motion 1 is in a place right now where we really need to have more discussion and learn a lot more from how you would approach that. So I absolutely agree.
Councillor Dean first.
Through the chair, I guess to council, I appreciate what Councillor Burrows said, that perhaps the intent of what you had from a concept isn't necessarily captured here, but I think it's really important that we as a group give specific instruction to our admin, because I'm curious how long this took the admin team to come up with this. I don't think it was done in half an hour.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, it was a team effort between communications, protective services, and community services, and myself. And we managed to cut this in about 3 days. Again, it was 3 days full on trying to figure out what direction to take it. So yeah, but kudos to the team for coming up with what we did in short notice.
Councillor Burrows?
Yeah, and I don't mean to cast any shadow on the efforts of administration at all. I'm just looking at the outcome of this kind of, and I had this in the back of my head when we first talked about it, but now it's kind of all there in graphic detail with the numbers attached. It's a little harsh. Where was I going with this? Oh, what I wanted to talk about was, and out of this, maybe there's even going to be a motion that we're going to, a resolution that we're going to, and this is why I think it needs to go to governance and priorities. And I want to have a conversation with RMA a little bit, because the province of Alberta has the worst flood mitigation building practices almost in Canada. They're horrible. They're absolutely horrible. They'll let you build just about anywhere. There's no guidance from the province. Then we have this provincial disaster recovery fund, which if you have a property, so let's say we have a property where, you know, a $500,000 house is wiped off of it. I can't remember the maximum amount per property. What is it, $500,000?
Yes.
I think it's $500,000. So a $500,000 house gets wiped off of it. And they'll, under the disaster recovery, they'll replace the $500,000 house, or up to a $500,000, or a $20,000 house, sorry, $100,000 house gets wiped off of it. They'll replace the $100,000 house, but it's a one-time limit, caveated and tied to the property. Can never ever again be claimed, whether you did the maximum or the minimum. And that conversation brought up, and we've been having conversations about insurance and uninsurable properties, uninsurable events, and that led us down a road to talk about a provincial insurance fund around flood and fire, a wildfire specifically, rather than the disaster recovery fund. So that you actually have some properties that can get insurance through a provincial or through a federal type of program, but that's not gonna happen without some kind of a resolution. So I wanna have more conversation on that. But at this point, I think this just needs to go to governance and priorities, and I apologize for the amount of time that you guys took on this. And again, it's not this is a really valuable conversation. I think it's something that we need to have as a municipality, so I hope that this effort is in no means wasted. So with that, I'm gonna try and craft a motion here. I'm gonna just be quiet for a minute and let somebody else talk, because I'm sure there's somebody that wants to. And
Councilor Prestige?
Through the chair to administration. I agree. We needed this information. You guys did a great job of getting us that information. It's just we can't make a decision right now. Once we go to GNP, we will use this information that you came up with, so it's not wasted. So, thank you for the effort and everything you did on it. It is going to be used.
Just waiting for Councilor Burrow's motion.
If I could just add one thing
Go
to
ahead.
what Councillor Burrows was speaking to with respect to the provincial legislation around flood. I know that it was in 2014, they had changed the Municipal Government Act, and specifically the application for properties. And they were supposed to provide municipalities a regulation around development in the floodway and flood fringes. And that never transpired. And I know that we have a couple property owners that have, over the last few years, lobbied the MLAs and the higher ups, trying to get the province to reopen that up. But for whatever reason, the MGA says that there's a regulation, but there is no regulation. And any conversations I've had with the province with respect to flooding, they're actually put it back in our ball court and say, well, the municipality can approve that. Well, we don't have the wherewithal. You know, like where's our river engineering crews and the flood crews with the province? They've got the knowledge, you know, on what can and what shouldn't be constructed in these areas. But we just don't have that regulation. And it's been since 2014 that we've waited for that.
Councilor Buchan?
Yeah, through the chair to John, I think that's what I'm getting from the conversations I've had with Freeman River Campground folks here is that this ball is being bounced back and forth as to whose responsibility it is to deal with this. And then you get the transportation mix and all of that into it. So I think it serves a purpose for us to open that can of worms and try to figure out whether we can push some of this further up the chain. So this has been a good exercise.
Can I just kind of, so if we do this in two and send back something along the lines of motion to send the policy back to GNP with a focus on local municipal or a localized loss of property along an individual, you know, electrical fire, you know, something catastrophic that locally affects, and then a second motion that maybe we look at a resolution around that 2014 legislation, so that we have clear guidelines at a provincial level. Because it's always, the problem is that second part, the provincial level is so broad, and I think we need to have a conversation about it. So how do we,
Councillor Wilhelm?
Would it be better for the second portion, Council Burrows, to lobby the RMA to discuss with the Alberta government?
we can certainly have, the way, the mechanism that we have through the RMA would be and we have a zone meeting coming up, but you at the municipal level, at our level, we create a resolution. We take it to the zone endorses the resolution, then it ends up at the RMA convention, and then the convention, if it passes at convention, then the RMA takes it on and starts to lobby it. The problem with writing resolutions is you can't tie the hands of the RMA in the fact that you'll often get a resolution that says exactly what the RMA has to do, and it ties their hands. So you want to try and get to a solution, not the road to get to that solution, if you know what I mean. That's why writing the resolution's a little tricky. But that's what I would think. So it's kind of, it starts around that 2014 legislation, and then a provincial flood insurance for properties that are currently, because there's more than a few properties that are swept up in this legislation that through no fault of their own, they remapped the floodways or floodplains, and they weren't, and now they are. The campground, for example, is one of them. When that remapping happened, they lost their overland flooding immediately. And I don't, you kind of can't blame the insurance company, but it's not any fault of the landowner either at that point. So let me make the first motion to move things along. So I'll make the motion to send the policy, what is this, 6204, back to governance and priorities with a focus on localized loss of residents.
I was checking that, clear for administration.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, just to make clear, you're deferring the proposed policy to include localized, what did we say? Localized.
Loss of property.
It's a focus on localized rather than this policy originally it was designed for something, but actually it was written very broadly, so that if you interpret that original writing in 2007, 2008, if a wildfire swept through, we would be on the hook for that 2.4 mil for every property lost by the way that policy's written. I don't think that was ever our intention, and I wasn't around. I'm assuming that wasn't the intention when you write it. So it's an idea to have a non-disaster related event.
Councillor Dean.
I think the motion, I think everybody understands that motion, but the term localized needs some definition behind that.
Right.
As well.
Yeah, can we then just discuss that definition at the GMP meeting? Gives you some time to flesh out your idea, Councilor Burrows.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't wanna send admin down a rabbit hole either, and if she's.
I think I got it.
Do you? Okay, well.
All right. Okay, so we got a motion on the floor, to send policy 6204 back to GMP. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that one is going back to draft one.
And
Councilor Rose.
if I may, Mr. Chair, does council want to entertain looking at a resolution around this on the 2014 legislation, especially, I think it would be valuable lobbying the province to kind of fill in that portion of the MGA that they've kind of left blank up till now.
Councillor Pukin?
Yeah, through the chair, Joan, on that comment, would that be an effective way for us to start getting that conversation into a place where, you know, potentially we could move the needle a little bit?
Through the chair to Councillor Kilken, if it hasn't been tried already, it would be good to try it again. I know we had the MLAs for the last year, I believe, and it was, the question was broached, and they essentially had said that it's not on the radar at all. So I think it would be good to bring it forward again, because it is putting us in a situation, and when I have those conversations with the province, because we have individuals, as Councillor Burrows indicated, that essentially can't develop their properties because they're in the floodway. And the province, back in the day, had promised that they would provide a regulation as to some passive uses that these properties could have on them. You know, and as well as some conversation around the flood fringe areas where things can be built up in the different matters. And short of the safety codes, there's a stand data that says that things need to be constructed 0.5 meters above the flood elevation. That's really all that's out there that gives us some guidance. Short of our land use bylaw, which back in the day council had added in that, because we knew that it put a constraint on our residents, we added in that, you know, if a home is lost and they live in the floodway, you know, we'll allow them to rebuild. We're gonna have to do some engineering to make sure that it's, you know, not wiped out again. So council has made that step forward, but it would be good to have some provincial backing.
And definitely one of the best ways to get provincial backing on things is to start a paper trail. If you have papers and you have something you go back on versus conversations that tend to get forgotten, pushed off, it's nice to have something tangible in hand that you can bring to them. I definitely support doing this too. Councillor Pukin?
Well, I think it's the same with the flood fringe because, you know, we've seen areas that would have been approved under the 30-meter setbacks that no longer exist. So, and those are well above the elevations. So I think it's really important to start to revisit some of that and actually get some mapping done that says, hey, this also has potential. So, no, I think it's good.
Councillor Burrows, you got an idea on how to draft, or be just to Mr. Frank?
Your understanding, your worship, so Councillor Burrow's motion would be to have administration research the flood regulations and draft a proposed resolution for consideration at the next GMP? Or do we have enough time?
I think the next
Third
RMA zone meeting will be the 25th.
Huh?
25th of
Yes.
September.
Yeah. It's full. Okay.
I would just say it would be nice if we're able to work on to get it before the 25th zone meeting, so we can bring it back before the RMA, if possible.
Council motion, we vote.
Councillor Dean?
So I just overheard a comment that our GMP is already full with 4 items. Could this be brought to a council meeting?
I would also like to mention that we do have 8.5 where we're looking at adding extra GMP dates, so I'm sure we can get something in before.
So you could just say to a GMP meeting and then it'd be flexible.
Okay.
Councillor Burrows?
Yeah, so I'll make the motion that we bring the idea of presenting writing a resolution
Yes.
around the
Right.
2014
Right.
floodplain guidelines, I guess, under the MGA to a GNP meeting. Is that enough
Yeah.
for you, or
It's called a regulation. So-
regulation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as a friendly amendment, would we be able to add for consideration for a, what's that called again? For RMA, resolution, for consideration for a resolution for
Yeah,
RMA?
I think I said a resolution in the motion, to draft a resolution.
Apologies, just didn't hear it the second time.
Did she write it down?
Can you repeat your full motion? It's been a bit piecemeal.
So draft a resolution, to RMA around the 2014 regulations specified in the MGA, and bring that to a governance and priorities meeting.
Will that work for administration? Joan can understand, I guess, you understand what we're working with here, I think, so.
And I'll, we have sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, we've got a meeting, I'll be spending 2 days with the RMA guys, Thursday and Friday. And I can have a conversation with them about this idea, because this, national and provincial flood insurance idea kind of came up, where you're insuring the uninsurable, for lack of a better term. It's not a new thing, it's been done. It's just not done here right now. So there might be a component in that resolution around that, but I'll get that information as well.
Right, so with that, we got a motion on the floor to get a resolution drafted here, come back to a GNP meeting. Any discussion on that motion? Call the question, all in favor? That one is carried. New business, 8.1. That's you again there, Joan?
You betcha. So we have attached a request from subdivision applicant 22 sub 05. This is for the subdivision located within the hamlet of Blue Ridge. They have opted to apply for the 1-year time extension. They had originally applied for it and then said that no, they wanted to perhaps change the outline plan and the whole subdivision plan. And it was essentially due to costs associated with the development of the original subdivision. They just recently came back to us and said we'd like to stick with the remaining, or the existing plan and the subdivision that was approved. So all I'm looking for is essentially council to approve the request for time extension so that they can carry on with the approved subdivision that the Municipal Planning Commission had provided in June of 2022. It still meets the requirements of our land use bylaw, the outline plan, and everything that the applicant had originally applied for.
Councilor Cogan?
Through the chair, Joe, I see that they've done all of the things that are necessary in a way that they're supposed to do it, so I'm perfectly comfortable making the motion that council approve the request for the time extension to register subdivision application 2022 sub 05 to June 1st of 2024.
You have a motion on the floor, Councilor Burrows, seeing your hand go up, do you wanna?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Anybody else need to speak to the motion? Seeing none, call the question, all in favor? That extension is passed. 8.2, Fire and Flood Emergency Management Update. Mr. Shepp. Morning, Sheldon.
Good morning, Council. Thank you for having me today. In front of you is a RFD in regards to fire and flood emergency management updates, along with several documentations and attachments, maps. In front of you, there should be three fire maps that are public knowledge, and a indication map of our evacuation alert for the fire. So make sure you have those. If you don't mind, in regards to the RFD, just want to go through this and advise the council on how things came down to us, on how it started and where we were and how we got there. So on May 5th, we had lots of action going on in regards to wildland fires out in the area. For Woodlands County, we had 3 fairly large wildland fires that were indicated to us from the GOA and Alberta Wildfire. There was 3 of them, the Shining Bank Fire, the Fox Creek Fire, and the Swan Hills Fire. The one that, they all got our attention, but the one that really got our attention was the Shining Bank Fire. All 3 fires started on the 5th of May, just so you're aware of that. And all 3 fires were started by lightning that rolled through the area. The Shining Bank Fire was just touched our county, literally not very much entered into woodlands, but it did enter into woodlands. In reference to where it was located, it was 27 kilometers southwest of the town of Whitecourt footprint, which was just on Township Road 570 and Range Road 130. So in regards to the wildland fires, Woodlands County put in some precautionary measures so we would be prepared and notifying our residents about what is going on and out in the area. We contacted the residents in the area by phone and in person. I was out in the area myself, along with our fire departments and emergency responders and other agencies. So we had face-to-face contact with the residents out there. We did structural protection procedures and actions in coordinates with the town of Whitecourt. With that, we had to put out some water barrels and making sure that we were prepared for water sources, because as we know, the water sources are very sparse out there, right? So just want to make sure that we had enough water just in case these fires decided to come into more of Woodlands County. Some of the figures in regards to the Wildland Fire DRP, or Disaster Relief Program application, which was submitted. So we put out barrels. We contracted a fire safety company. We had to rent a SPU, so Structure Protection Unit trailer, from the province, just so we were prepared. We were looking at $103,000 in the end for that preparedness. Excuse me. And then we also, again, like I said, we contacted and contracted a fire safety company, local, to have more resources. As we know, we needed more resources on hand and ready, just in case. We were up in the 9,000 mark for that. So for that DRP, that was presented to the province on July the 7th for $112,000. In the end, for the wildland fires, there was 0 Woodlands County residents affected in regards to loss of property and or damage to their property from the Shining Bank. The Fox Creek fire and the Swan Hills fire, they were still on our radar. And I was in contact with Alberta Wildfire daily and the GOA daily on these fires. Basically had 3 different teams meetings going on because each fire was run by a incident management team. So trying to get information from each IMT took time. Every 2 weeks, the IMT switched out. So they would bring in an IMT from Denver. They brought an IMT from Australia, Ontario. So making sure that my contact and my point of contact with that IMT incident commander was updated. So we were getting information brought forward to us and then pushed out to the general public via our PIO. It was very, very important. Is there any questions from council on the wildland fires and where we were and where we went?
Hey, start leaving council. Councilor Burrows.
So, I'm gonna give you because you may not be aware, Sheldon, that there was just and we talked about this resolution process. So there's a resolution that was passed at the last zone meeting where it basically states that the problems with the communication between the municipalities, the province, the different zones, the FMAs, all of these different organizations were not working very well. So the resolution says, be it resolved that the RMA engage with the appropriate government ministries, Alberta municipalities, Alberta fire chiefs, and association to develop a long-term strategy for the resourcing and management of wildlife land fires outside of the forested protection area, and that the RMA of Alberta and Alberta municipalities and fire chiefs association and the appropriate government ministries establish a working group of subject matter experts, senior elected officials, and municipal administrators. So we're just trying to get an idea of we can't have that communication unless we know on your end what the heck went wrong. So for and what went right.
It sounds like that resolution was for out of the FPA, is that correct?
Yes, but I'm assuming we're gonna talk about in as well. That there's gonna be a huge, because we even talked about how municipalities fund things like, for example, Woodland spends a fair bit of money on an airport that supported way outside of what we were looking at for a fire area. And I think we had all 4 CL-215Ts here, plus 5 Airbus and 2 or 3 Erickson Sky Cranes and a CH-47, which are not at all local. So, that's a huge drain on the infrastructure. So
Yeah.
anyway, this is where we wanted to have the discussion. So
Yeah, and I through Chair to Councillor Burrows, I appreciate your comments on communication. Like I stated, every 2 weeks there was a switch out of individuals. The first 1 to 2 switch outs, IMT switchovers, were smooth from a GOA standpoint. When it got more into the incident, getting information brought down from the GOA to us was a hassle. I'm not gonna lie. Myself, the DEM, the PIO, even the deputy DEM, we were reaching out to them constantly via phone, via emails, however we could to get where are we at and where are we going, right? Because residents and councillors are wanting some our answers for questions. So I think and I have not had a debrief with Alberta Wildfire yet about any of this. They're still dealing with these wildland fires. Some of them are still active and some of them are put to bed. So once they are in the area, the Whitecourt Division and the Etzen Division, and the Slave Lake Division. Slave Lake Division, there wasn't much communication from them because it wasn't affecting us directly, but it was. So we knew about it, but we weren't in the loop all the time about those. A debrief needs to happen between Woodlands County and them to see where can we be better and where can they be better, right? Because in a wildland fire, as we all know, we're in the FPA. The direction comes from them. They are in charge. They tell us, turn left, turn right, stop. Right? It comes from the FPA and it comes from the GOA and Alberta Wildfire. Just like when we put on the evacuation alert for the area, that came from the incident commander of that incident to us, going off indicators, going off of, okay, this is our trigger line. Let's put that in play right now, right? So we have those procedures ready. But again, the communication, it was hard to get sometimes, councillors, right? So I do agree that moving forward, as we all know, this is going to happen again. Things like this are going to happen again. And from this onset of these, it was a bit of a show. It was. in regards to where are we going with this. I've met on scene for this fire here alone, the Shining Bank fire. I was there when this thing got going, and the representatives that I met had no idea what they were doing, not a clue, because they don't have any eyes in the sky. They have nothing resources. The gentleman I met, he left scene and head back to Edson, and he's a representative from Alberta Wildfire, right? So it was way out in left field, and then way out in left field, and trying to get everybody together. Where are we going with this, right? So I think from our standpoint, from our preventative and what we did for fire and what we set up, we were ready, you know. People were advised, and we did what we could with what we had.
Councilor Coogan? Yeah, through the chair to Sheldon. I guess my question is that I see you're being very politically correct, and when you debrief now with FBA, like with your fire prevention group, when you have that debrief, how blunt are you going to be about the airport? How blunt are you going to be about the fact that that this representative left? Because you can't be politically correct with these emergency things, and I think it's fair that you should be able to relay to us exactly what you feel, the position that you were put in. So, you know, if we're going to move forward with this, I think we have to be fairly harsh in the way that we look at this, because we are in the boreal, and we dodged a bullet this year, and I quite frankly, if that's the kind of attitude that we have at that level, I think it needs to be looked at, it needs to be addressed.
Through the chair to Councillor Coogan, very, honestly, very blunt with them, because in my world, it's life and death. Nobody died on this. Nobody got hurt. It's a win. It's a win. But tomorrow, the next day, year from now, totally different. We don't know what the future holds. So I want to make sure the corrective actions are taken. Because again, it was unacceptable for individuals that I met to do what they did in regards to other agencies. Because I was looking for answers, and I wanted a yes or no answer, and I didn't get that.
Anything else from council? Councilor Rose?
Just one last, and so this is on the fires specifically, but, so if there's basically three things that I've kind of identified here is that, I mean, we were asking as municipalities, we were asking for a fire ban for weeks, which we can't put on. That has to be done through the GOA, especially in the FMAs, right?
Correct.
And we weren't getting that fire ban, and we weren't getting the off-highway vehicle ban. We weren't getting anything. Now, part of that may be part of the election, but I mean, everything's still got to function. Just because you're in an election doesn't mean you get to shut everything down. The staff up seemed to be late, based on there was no resources available when the fire season started so early. But our fire season, when is the official start of our fire season? March. And this all started when?
May 5th. I remember the day.
So March, April, May, so we should have been crewed up.
They should have been, not us.
We as a collective province. So I'm okay. I just want to make sure that we get that, and then the communication between the FPA, the GOA, Alberta Wildfire, the DEMS, and the municipalities, right?
Okay. Correct, sir.
Okay.
So nothing else we want to continue on there, gentlemen?
I will continue on. So these, the next incident was the flooding, and it literally happened on June 18th, the day that we put off our fire advisory / evacuation. The river decided to do what it did. So I'm just gonna run you through some indications here on this incident. So on June 20th is when Athabasca and the McLeod River flooded. Evacuation alerts were issued June 20th for Flats Road, Old Ferry, Cut Banks Road, Eagle River Outfitters area, and east of Fort Assiniboine along Township Road 620 Alpha. On June 21st, we had a SOL, so a state of local emergency, put in place, which was renewed. The SOL was renewed on the 28th of June and terminated on the 5th of July. Evacuation orders were put in place on the 21st of June for Old Ferry, Flats, Cut Banks, Eagle River Outfitters, east of Fort Assiniboine along Township Road 620 Alpha. It's not in here, but we had operations take place also on the 21st in regards to evacuations with the RCMP, Whitecourt Fire, Blue Ridge Fire, CPOs were involved. That ran through the evening of the 21st. Woodlands County put preemptive emergency operations in place. We built a berm on Township Road 620 Alpha, and these are estimated figures that were put on the disaster relief program application. So, estimated cost of $89,000. Direct emergency operations, which included a rental of a Sherp, helicopter rental for site visits to get above fire crew hours, and Woodlands County employee emergency operation hours at estimated cost of $77,000. Evacuation residents that checked in with Woodlands County at a reception center at the Whitecourt and the Fort Assiniboine office. They received food and hotel vouchers from the county. So in total, we documented residents, so people, each person, it's 182 individuals that registered. Out of that, there was 70 hotel vouchers, 138 breakfast vouchers. These are daily vouchers, if I may say that. 170 lunch vouchers, 193 dinner vouchers at a cost of $25,000. Due to the large overland flooding footprint, there was 14 sites in Woodlands County that were assessed with uninsurable infrastructure damage. That would be roads, culverts, and so on, estimating at a cost of $531,500. The Hard Luck Bridge washouts, Range Road 112 Trestle Bridge abatement washouts, Fort Assiniboine Bridge on Range Road 51 damage, estimated cost of $30,000. The Grove Creek Campground was damaged at an estimated cost of $25,000. So due to the massive countywide infrastructure damage, $9 million has been estimated potential mitigation projects from the overland flooding incident. On June 28th, Woodlands County had a contractor, McElhenney, is that correct? McElhenney Limited, for a geotechnical assessment of 3 sites. So we had Grove Creek Road, Old Ferry Road, and Cut Banks Road. During those site visits, Mr. Richard Twatch, Field Service Manager, accompanied the company. That final report was also put on the DRP at $6,500. So an estimated, now again, these are estimated numbers that was come up with, was 225 residents within Woodlands County footprint were affected. Again, estimated numbers. And the total DRP that was submitted to the province was $10 million, $192,000. Any questions so far on the flooding?
Councilor Coogan?
Through the chair to Sheldon again. What I found interesting when I read through all of this information was that the issue with Freeman River, there's absolutely no mention of it, and we have one property which lost probably 3 meters right by the Freeman River Bridge, plus the fact that that's a very key transportation route, and it is now bored out in behind the riprap on the south side, and it's dramatically increased on the north side. We have the Freeman River Campground, which is prone to flooding every time it floods, and there's a resident living there. The problem we have with Freeman River is the fact that there's been a tremendous amount of logging that's in all of the waterways, both in the Judy Creek, and then, Deer Mountain areas, which all feed into the Morris River and then into the Freeman. And really, there's not a lot of information that you guys get, because there's been no management. And the Freeman River is prone to flash floods because of the elevation change. And we've seen that, I don't know what it was, 8 or 9 years ago when we had trees going over the road there on 658. So I'm just curious why that's not included in this overall.
Through the chair to Councillor Cookin, the Freeman River, from what I'm told from the River Forecasting Department, they have very little indicators on that river. They have one indicator at the bridge, which I know about, and that is it. That's all. So when this all happened on the McLeod and the Athabasca, they never ever mentioned the Freeman to us. It wasn't on their radar whatsoever.
Okay, just a question then for us to figure out how we're going to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
What do we as council do to make sure that that gets on the radar? Because it's going to become a bigger problem.
So through the chair to Councillor Cookin, I've met with the representative this last time the Freeman decided to rise on site. The representative could not believe what was going on because they had no indications, zero. And I mentioned to them that we, as Woodlands County, need to sit down with them face to face and discuss where we are and where we're going. Because as you just said, it's prone. It's going to happen again, right? And they agreed. They agreed that a sit down has to happen. When that's going to happen, I don't know. I don't have a date or a time, but I would like to have it happen sooner than later, sir.
Can we actually, as a council, then make a recommendation to, and say we want this done, we want it done now, because we've indicated, for example, to Alberta Transportation for the last 15 years that the Athabasca Bridge is a problem, and it never became a problem until somebody fell through the hole and you could look down into the river. So
Through
we
the
need
chair,
to deal with it.
Councillor Cookin, if you can leave your comments with myself, with the DEM, I will, when we're done this meeting, again, have that conversation with the representative that I have,
Okay.
and I will get back to administration on where we're going with it.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Got Councillor Prestige and Councillor Dean.
Through the chair to administration, this $10 million that we're applying to the GOA for, do we have to spend that money first to get it? Or is this, once it gets approved, we can do the projects? Or?
So through the chair to Councillor Prestige, these again were estimated numbers to get our DRP fast-tracked, you could put it that way, or to get it in the system. We needed to give them figures. They wanted figures of where we were with damage, where we were with operations. We are, if I may redirect the question maybe to Infrastructure Director in regards to projects and where we are with some projects.
Through the chair to council, generally, the municipality has to spend the money before submitting. Some of that $10 million includes work along the old Ferry Road where there was a lot of bank erosion. We have engineers working on a temporary solution which should be covered under the DRP. More permanent solution hasn't been determined if they would fund that or not. And that's would be a few $1 million for those permanent solutions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Through the chair to Andre, like the Cutbanks Road, we've been dealing with that for quite a few years. And we were talking about purchasing land, rerouting the road. Is that suddenly gonna be part of this project? Or are we going back to?
Through the chair to council Prestige, moving ahead on that plan, we would submit it under the DRP. whether it gets funded or not will be another issue.
Councillor Dean?
Through the chair to Sheldon, have you guys got an answer as to why the forecasting model on the evening of the 20th went awry?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean. We had a a Teams meeting with Rivers Forecasting, and they went over their 1 in 150, 1 in 100 forecasting.
Prior to the event or after?
On the 20th. This was on the 20th. And we told them that what they're showing us it's not making sense to us. You know, things are happening, and your figures are incorrect. As we all know, some of the indicators in the river were knocked out. I don't know if there were some photos floating around of GOA members in the river up to here trying to get indicators, and they couldn't. And so I think they were at a loss as well of, you know, the numbers show here, but it's actually here, right? Just like the Freeman River. You know, the numbers show here, but it's not. So again, with the sit-down meeting that we are going to have with the River Forecasting Department, it's going to be a question. You know, everything they had, and to be honest and truthful, everything they had, they told us throwing out the window.
Yeah, at the last second.
Last second, we're throwing it out the window. It doesn't make sense. We're going off of a napkin.
So when is that meeting scheduled with River Forecasting?
That's again the one that I'm going to reaching out to them about, because I met with the representative on site when the Freeman was going, and the communications then were we need to have a sit-down meeting, and I was waiting for them to get back to me. That hasn't happened, so it's going to happen soon.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, I guess I just want to direct this through the chair to Andre and possibly CAO Frank. When we go to spend the money on these disaster relief, we pay it. We obviously have paid up front. My question is how do you have we got paid for some of the disaster funding that where we fixed the road? I believe it was the Flats Road 3-4 years ago. Have we got that funding yet?
Yeah, Your Worship, members of council, we have an active file open with the Municipal Affairs Emergency Management. We have received $264,000, but we're still working with them to verify our expenditures. So the answer is yes, but there is some funding outstanding. Your Worship, members of council, to Councillor Coogan's other question in regards to we're only spending the minimum to bring the infrastructure back to an acceptable level. We're not doing enhancements at this point in time, so we're only doing the minimum to allow the flow of traffic.
And do you know in the 2018 flood grants we put in, MLA Long has reached out to me, and I've been in touch with CAO Frank too, and trying to get information, see if they can try to, I guess, expedite the remainder funds there a little bit too. So, ears open. Like I said, we do have an MLA trying to help us out in this end too. So, go ahead, Sheldon.
If I may, Chair, I just want to hit on the point that the last 3 months have been a challenge for staff. And as the DEM for the county, I will say the staff have really stepped up to the plate and done an amazing job, all the way from mapping to where I sit. Just so council understands that this wasn't a one-person show. This was a team effort put through on everything. For both incidents, there was no loss of life. So for me, that's a win. Nobody got killed like what's happening in Hawaii right now, right? And that scene over there can happen here. So moving forward, yes, there's takeaway, there's actions, there's training that's going to happen for our staff members and myself. But I will say, the team that I have, amazing job.
Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, I guess just one more question, Sheldon, is that, how do we get our residents, being that we're in a fairly high risk area, involved in our SMART program for, that's something that should be really key in our emergency planning.
Through the chair to Councillor Kukin, so right now there is an application out for Fire Smart for municipalities to apply for, which I have been talking with our third party about. And I think an initiative that we need to push forward is Fire Smart home assessment training for individuals. Because they go out to, say, your property and walk through the guidelines of fire smarting a property. Because we are in where we live in the FPA, it's vitally key. So I think that really would hit home with a lot of individuals and a lot of people. Again, that takes some effort and time on fire members to be trained up, right? Because again, I don't look at administration to take the training. I'm looking at people in that industry already that have some background in fire to take that training and go and take it out to the public.
Anything else from council? I just want to kind of wrap this up and say, council definitely does appreciate the work that administration's put into this and all the other staff you guys got on the ground working on it. I know from my standpoint, especially being in the ensemble area there with the fires, it can be very frustrating with the communications, and sometimes the communication was slow. But again, that's communication from up top coming down. So we do appreciate the effort you guys did in trying to get, I guess, the updates out to us as soon as you guys were able to. So thank you and thank the staff very much for you guys' commitment to that.
Appreciate that.
With that, can I get a motion from council, please? Councillor Wilhelm?
Motion the council accepts the fire and flood emergency management update as information.
All right, motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And it's passed. All right, down to 8.3, motor grading contracting. Mr. Bachand?
Your worship, members of council, at the July 12th Governance Priorities Committee meeting, the administration was instructed to present the following contract rate or criteria to Woodlands County Council for approval. The criteria listed is the same as brought to the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting, except for the two changes, one being the term will be for a 1 to 5 year period based on 1,700 hours annually, and that the allowable grader to be provided for the term can be up to 10 years old. So the above conditions will form the basis of a request for proposals for contract grader. Once approved, administration will let out an RFP for the contracting services, and we'll also let out a proposal for lease purchase tender for new graders. They'll both close. There will be an analysis done on both and brought back to council for consideration. This will form part of the future 2024 budget and budgets moving forward. And it should also be noted that there will be an HR cost involved should council choose to procure contracted services. One question I did not put in here, but administration requires direction from council on how many graders is council looking at?
I believe right now we have 2 graders we're looking to replace.
Yes.
So I'm going to assume our county needs would be at least 1 grader. If we had 1 grader operator or contract operator filling a position, we could either refurbish or do something with the 1 and keep a contract going until we end up with 2 more back in our fleet. But you got any other comments from council? I'm just kind of spitballing here. Councillor Coolgan?
Yeah, through the chair, John Ray. I think that from a management perspective, I think, if we're looking at this as something that we're going to do, where, you know, we would have to have the information that says, okay, where would this kind of a situation be best applied? Would it be in this area or this area? Where would we be able to best, you know, put a contract operator? To me, that would be an indicator of how many units that we would use, because there's a possibility that, you know, you have your graveling program where you're going to have a grader that's involved in that may not be able to do that service or whatever. So I think that, you know, that would be an idea that I would like to hear from infrastructure.
And we also got areas where I know we've cut beats in the past and we've been running short, so yeah, it's something else taking consideration. It might be, instead of trying to replace equipment for some of those shortfalls, we can do it this way too. Mr. Bouchon?
Through the chair, Council Kogan, if council's wish is to contract for one unit, it would be the Anselmo beat. If it's council's desire to go to two, then it would be the Anselmo beat and one on this side.
So what's council feel for a number to put out for? Go ahead, Councilor Rose.
Through the chair to Andre, how many beats are there?
We are currently, through the chair, Council Burrows, we are currently operating 5 beats.
Councilor Dean first and Councilor Coogan.
Through the chair, Andre, can you just give a real Coles notes as to why you'd recommend Anselmo and one area over here?
Through Chair, Councilor Dean, Anselmo beat would be recommended for one because it is somewhat isolated from the other areas, from the two operating shops. That's why we would choose the Anselmo beat.
Okay.
And there is history on that beat being contracted out. Why a second one on this side? Trying to get 2 graders in one area, 2 contract graders in an area might be a little difficult. So spreading it out 2 different areas, the odds are you're going to get more interest.
So Councilor Coogan first and then back to Councilor Dean.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, Andre, because, yeah, there's contractors over here that already have graders, so I know there would be some interest on this side. It's just from a management perspective for infrastructure. If that works, then it works for my thought process as well.
Go ahead, Councilor Dean and Councilor Prestige.
So through the chair, back to Andre. Could you suggest any one of the 5 beats as the most problematic?
The most problematic, I would say we have 2 problematic ones. They are the 2 white court beats. Simply expectations and the amount of hills we have.
Density of residents.
Yes, and yes.
Okay.
Councilor Prestige?
Through the chair to Andre. I'm in favor of doing 2 beats. Like, we're just getting a tender, we don't have to take them. We're just basically getting pricing to see if it's feasible. So,
yeah.
I'm good with doing the Anselmo in one here.
Mr. Bouchon?
I'll just point out, we identify the beats, the roads. That way when contractors are looking at it, they can identify, yes, there's a lot of hills here, where it's flat, that has an impact on their bidding. So we will identify the 2, and they will be separate RFPs.
Council, where do you want to go with this? Councilor Burrows?
So if there's kind of 2 things running parallel, I'm guessing, or I'm hearing from council, they want to try letting out 2 beats, the 2 recommended beats that Andre had recommended, and then we'd also be looking at putting that beside replacing 2 graders. We have 2 that are up.
Through the chair to Councilor Burrows. So, just to clarify, council wants a comparison on operating, purchasing, operating versus contracting out. So, the prices we got a few months ago on graders, those prices are no longer valid. So we would get pricing on replacing 2 units. Do the analysis based on 1,700 hours and present that in a comparison to the contracting out. So council can make the decision, do you want to contract or do you want to purchase?
And if I may, I think it's important that council specifies that, you know, this isn't, it could be a lease, it could be a purchase, it could be a refurb, it could be an anything. Get us some options that, you know, I think there's 3 different refurbs that you can get along the level. So what are the options that are available and what's the ups and downs?
Through Chair Councilor Burrows, we did look at the refurbishing of our units. The suppliers told us our size grader, it's not worth doing. If we had one size bigger, it would be, but they're saying you're better off just buying a new one based on what we've got.
So,
Go ahead.
like, I don't have a number on that though. Like I'm hearing things through different suppliers that say you can, and that it's 70% the cost of new. So that's where I'm having a hard time, and I don't know which supplier you're talking to. Is this just CAT, or is it just refitting, or just Deere? I don't know. So I guess that's why I'm trying to be very specific and making sure that we get everything in front of us.
Mr. Bashan?
Through the chair to council, if council wants written quotes for refurbishing, we can include that, not a problem. I should also point out that the initial plan was 2 graders for this year, and we're looking at 2 more for next year, so that will also be a budget discussion for 2024.
Yeah, I think as far as from council standpoint, the more numbers, the more information we have, I think the more of an educated decision we can make. We want to try to do what we can to, don't want to spend more money than we have to if we can get something that definitely works and will last us a while anyways. Councillor Dean?
Through the chair to council, kind of what I'm hearing is that maybe this would be easier in 2 motions. One, to direct administration to let out 2 RFPs for council's consideration, and the second one is, once those are back, have a comparison to lease costs, refurb costs, and purchase cost.
I think that's the way we're kind of going here. Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair to Andre, when you're getting pricing on the graders, I don't know how it is on the heavy equipment, but like on the heavy trucks, there's no more municipal discount. Is it the same on the equipment, and have you got pricing from Canoe?
Through the chair to Councillor Prestige, given the supply and demand situation right now, there are hardly any government subsidies on pretty much anything you can buy. And when we get pricing from the suppliers, they are Canoe approved suppliers.
But are we getting Canoe to do the request for pricing, or are we just staying with ourselves?
We put our proposal together and it goes out, but we get Canoe pricing.
Hey, council, we wanna make this in 2 motions? Councillor Dean?
Sure, I'll make the first motion that council directs administration to let out 2 RFP for 2 different grading beats for council's consideration.
Okay, first motion on the floor, 2 RFDs. Any discussion on the motion? See none, call the question, all in favor? Okay, that one is carried.
Yeah, I'll
And-
try the second one. So,
Okay.
move that council directs administration to do a comparative analysis of the, the contracted pricing that comes back from the RFPs versus a purchase, a lease, or a refurb.
Any discussion on that? Work for you, Andre?
Yes.
See none, call the question, all in favor? And that one is passed. Mr. Pashon?
Can I'd just like to point out, before anyone asks a question down the road, timeline, we are probably looking at late October, early November before it comes back to council.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the information, Andre. 8.4, the Alberta Community Partnership Grants.
Your worship, your members of council, in regards to the Alberta Community Partnership Program, we received an email from Mr. McIver in regards to the 5 different types of grants that are available and the application deadlines in that. Also we provided council with some background information in regards to each one of them. In our strategic plan, that was our business plan, it was identified under community organizational excellence. 3 of the 4 would apply in regards to review the organizational review report to enhance the corporate culture, which could be applied for under this grant program. The municipal intern under, did I just miss it? 5.4, is the applying for the community partnership grant to review the viability of the municipality. And number 5.5, develop a succession plan for the organization, which indicates that we apply for a municipal internship program through municipal fair. Is council interested in making application to the ACP grant for those initiatives?
Councillor Wilhelm?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't, other than there's probably a little bit of administrative time in it, but other than that, it seems like a no-brainer.
I agree, anytime we can do something on somebody else's penny, it's definitely worth applying for. Anything else from council? Councillor Wilhelm?
The motion that council directs administration to apply for the ACP grants as discussed.
Motion on the floor, any discussion on that motion? Anybody? Seeing none, I'll call the question, all in favor? That is carried. Uh, 8.5. G&P committee additional meetings.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, we have a number of items that we're have sitting in the queue to deal with the governance and priorities and previous earlier today you have also another item going to GMP. So we're looking if council's prepared to have a meeting in September sometime. An additional meeting.
Councillor Wilhelm?
So you would look to have one later, we have one currently booked, I believe, on the 6th. We'd
correct.
Have one, maybe the 20th?
That's possible, yeah, with the understanding, and I'll just grab my, your current schedules is the 6th is governance priority, council meeting on the 13th, and you have a road tour on the 19th, and then a council meeting on the 27th.
And if we're,
there's a possible NPC on the 20th.
Yeah, and that doesn't exclude any other committee meetings that,
We would like to try to get, we're talking the, resolution built before the 25th zone meeting to bring forward to. Just, to me, either Councillor Dean?
Just a kind of a different question. If we were able to select a day, let's say we picked the 20th, can we bump one of the items from the 6th and put that on? Yeah.
yeah, again, I'll work with the chair to juggle the.
Okay, and further to that, if we couldn't find a date, we could still bump one if we feel there's something of priority that needs to go there. Okay.
Just checking everybody's schedules. How does, effective 20th work for everybody in their schedules?
What time?
Go ahead.
6 p.m.
Yeah, typically
Six-
in the evening.
6 p.m.?
That's in September 20th.
Yeah, September 20th, 6 p.m.
I won't be available, but that doesn't.
Councillor Rose?
Yeah, I can't do that night.
21st work for anyone?
What's, I'm assuming because around your RMA schedule, what's your,
Yeah, I'm in a board meeting until 5 that night.
the 21st?
Yeah. Only takes 2 hours to come home.
The 20th, is that an all-day one for you, or you?
No, the 20th is, I've got something in the evening that day.
I don't know if, Councillor Wilhelm, if we were to do the 20th at say 4 o'clock, could you make that work? If we went a little bit earlier?
I could certainly try it. I might be a little bit late, but.
Just trying to check times or work for, Councillor Dean? Councillor Kuchen, if the 20th is still up for you? Councillor Prestige, what's your schedule on the 20th for the evening? Would 4 o'clock, something a little bit earlier, work for you?
Yeah, that'd work for me, but, yeah.
Because we have majority of council, the MPC, if they gotta bump it back a little bit later, I'm sure they can bump it back a little bit later. Looking at you to make sure it's all right. Instead of a 5, if it's a 6 o'clock start, we can probably make that work around the GMP. So if it's okay with anybody, does anybody want to make a motion for September 20th at 4 o'clock? Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll make a motion that we add an additional GNP meeting for the date of September 20th at 4 p.m. at the White Court Chamber, or White Court Council Chambers.
Councillor Prestige?
Well, I'll wait till we.
Okay, motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? None, call the question. All in favor? All right, Councillor Prestige?
Council meeting on the 13th. Peter and I are both at a conference.
Okay. Okay, how are we doing on time, Mr. Frank, for, talking about for lunch? Are we going, bringing in, or?
We are, the individual caterer is a little running late, so 12:50.
No problem, it's coming in?
Yep.
Okay, we'll just keep rocking until they get here then. 8.6 Proclamation Rail Safety Week.
Your worship, members of council received an email from CN asking council to consider Rail Safety Week, supporting it and doing a proclamation in light of the 2 recent incidents, one in White Court and one yesterday in Blue Ridge. I think this might be timely that we reinforce rail safety to our general public.
Councillor Dean?
Make a motion the council proclaims September 18th to 24th, 2023 as Rail Safety Week.
Okay, motion on the floor. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that one's carried. 9.1 correspondence information items. Anything in the list there council wants to discuss? Seeing, Council Dean?
move that council accepts correspondence and information items as circulated.
And you have a motion on the floor. Call the question. All in favor? One is carried. 10, council reports and questions. Start over here, Councillor Poopin. Throw you off your game there a little bit.
Not a problem. Haven't had a lot of work this between meetings. There's just a few things that I wanted to address. We're having a very interesting time with our RETA right now. For a long time, the Law Committee has been wagging the dog, and we're doing some major readjustments, and one of the things that I found was that unless we make sure that we get the structure in place properly, that the RETA is actually a benefit to the municipality. We would, I mentioned that it would probably not be in our best interest to participate if there was a continuation of that structure not being followed. And so we've really bore down on that, which has really affected the committee, because they thought that they actually ran the process. And so it's going to be interesting what happens in our meetings with our consultants then with Deloitte as to how we restructure in the future, and what I will bring to council as where we're going to go with that in the next through the next budget cycle. So then the only other thing I had was there's a couple of notices of motion that I would like to bring up for future budget deliberations. I'd like to bring the drainage issues from Goose Lake Hamlet up to council to have a look at. So that's one notice of motion. Do you want them all?
I'll just take them one at a time.
Your worship, members of council, I can save you, that's already on our list, and part of the road tour will be for council's consideration, so we are already.
So that's
already on the list.
It's whether it makes your capital budget, then that'll be, but it is on the 2024 budget.
It's on our list, but we have to make that decision at budget time.
Okay. Then the next notice of motion is to start the conversation to address the safety issue at the intersection of Highway 658 and Highway 33. It has to do with speeding on 658, the noise, and the fact that we had an emergency situation there last week where a semi-trailer log truck went right across the highway at road speed, ended up in the muskeg, completely buried in the bush there. And this isn't the first time this has happened. This has happened a number of times, and it's going to affect, somebody's going to get killed there. There's no rumble strips. There was no sign. There's no speed control coming up to that corner. And I'd like that that could go to GNP as to how we address that and get transportation to address it, because I know that's not a county issue.
Mr. Frank?
Sir, your worship, member, just to correct, Highway 32 and 658, is that what?
Highway 33 and 658.
33, sorry,
Yep.
yeah, I get the two. And I know that we've reached out to Alberta Transportation to invite them to a meeting with the recent hole in the bridge, that we thought that it might be to have the regional director come and have a discussion on the general and bring the respective players involved in regards to that. So again, maybe the notice of motion is to invite Alberta Transportation to a meeting, and discuss these items.
Does that one work for you?
That works for me.
Okay, so we had a notice of motion, to have Alberta Transportation discuss safety items in the roads. No discussion on a notice of motion, call the question, all in favor? Okay, and you got another one, or is that?
No, that will do. The other one's been addressed.
Okay, any questions for Councillor Buchman? Councillor Wilhelm?
Hey, haven't had a whole lot going on this summer, but we did have a community services meeting last week, and some items came out of that, so we just share it with council. If you guys know, I think it came to GMP maybe, but we had the block party grant that was having, that we had developed, and kind of changed it a little bit this year, make it more broad and encompassing, so more people would be applying for it. We've had 4 people apply for it now, including one is a new resident to the area. Her event is happening, I believe, in the 3rd week in September, and essentially it was a get to know your neighbors type event that's happening down Range Road 120. So that's, I think that rural community connections grant, which is what the block party grant is called now, it's been a pretty great success. And then, as we all know, Help Seekers did our social needs assessment, and they've offered at no cost to do an additional recreational survey for us. So in 2016, survey was done for recreational needs, and the discussion was to have it redone in 5 years. Obviously, issues with COVID and staffing has that never occurred, so this will take that place and provide us some data to update the recreational master plan for the future. So 2 great things coming out of the Community Services Committee. And then other than that, I want to remind everybody the Hamlet Hoedown is in Fort Assiniboine this weekend, so I think a few of us will be attending that for the parade. And lastly is just wanted to publicly send out condolences to the family of Ryan Gould. He's a resident in our region. I believe he's in Reeve Cush's region. I attended the funeral last weekend. It was very well attended. I talked with Ryan's wife and just gave our condolences as a group to her and asked her to reach out if she needed anything from Woodlands County to help them move forward. It's obviously a very tough time for them. He was working fighting fires, running a long line, and had an incident there, and unfortunately he passed away. So I want to send public condolences out to their family. Other than that, I'm good.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Wilhelm. Any other comments to Councillor Wilhelm? Move on, Councillor Dean.
Thank you. Yeah, I attended the same community services meeting, and I'm not going to reiterate what Jeremy said, but I do want to say that the survey that Help Seeker is offering to do for the county free of charge is an online survey, so just so people are aware of that. And the only other thing I'd like to put on everybody's radar is that September 30th is a National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and Whitecourt Indigenous Friends Society will have a walk and a celebration at Rotary Park in Whitecourt, and so I encourage council to come if they're able. And that's it.
Anything for Councillor Dean? No? Thank you. Councillor Bressich.
It's been fairly slow. We had a meeting, Councillor Reeve Cush and some members of administration met with the 2 managers from West Fraser, one for the MDF plant and the other one for the sawmill. Went great, learned a lot of stuff from what they're doing, and vice versa. So we should be doing more of this with our major employers in the county, and it's a great thing we should keep on doing with these people. We're planning a tour of the mill, so once we get a date, all of council and administration that want to go is more than welcome. on that, it's been fairly slow. I'd like to make
Notice motion.
notice a motion to the GNP regarding our boards and the number of members at large we have at the boards. We've never done this in the last 5.5 years that I've been on council. And I think it's overdue that we look at these boards. Some of the boards we may not need anymore. Some we might have too many members on them. So I would really like to see it come to the GNP before our old meeting.
So we got a notice of motion to have our boards brought back to a GMP meeting for reevaluation. Mr. Frank?
Yeah, your worship, remember the terms of reference for each of our Woodlands County committees?
Yeah.
Just the interior one, the internal one, right? Okay.
Alright, notice of motion on the floor, call the question, all in favor? Okay, we'll bring that one back. Any other comments for Councillor Prestige? Move on, Councillor Burrows.
Thank you. Mostly what I've been working on, is just having, conversations with, residents in my area that have been affected by the flood and that aren't, insured. So I keep getting the question, when is this provincial disaster recovery funding gonna become, or application gonna become available? So that's the big conversation that I've been having with people right now, and I guess that's why I've been talking about some of this flood mitigation more than anything. The RMA stuff's been I won't say on hold, but a lot of the boards that I sit on with those are breaking for the summer and still haven't come back from the election necessarily. One of them forgot to put my email on the new board list when they came back, so that's about it for me. As I just and I guess I'll ask the Reeve or CAO or anybody, do we have any idea when the province is going to approve this disaster recovery? And because we're losing the summer where people, like, we've got a winter coming where people have got homes that are, still water damaged, and if there's gonna be funding available, or, the sooner the better. And I know it's a provincial application, but is there any way we can light a fire under somebody? So more than anything, I'm just wondering if anyone's had any communication.
Some of the conversations I've been having with Marty on trying to work on this, but Mr. Frank might be able to shed some more light on that.
Your worship, members of council, I believe Mr. Shep has some information.
Yes, if I may, just on that note, on DRP application, so we did apply for 2 DRPs, one fire, one flood. As per the GOA or municipal affairs, the application process could take up to 18 months to be approved. 18 months from the time that we submit. Could be sooner, hopefully it is. Once we, as a county, are approved, just saying if we are approved, not 100% guaranteed, then that word will be pushed out to the public, and individuals that you are talking with, they then can apply for a private sector DRP. It does not run through the county, it does not run through administration. So it comes from myself as a affected landowner, homeowner, straight to the GOA. So just letting you know, we did apply, it's in the queue, and it could take up to 18 months for approval.
And again, as I understand, we're one municipality in the list. There's multiple municipalities hit by this. Is there any way, just given, like, we do have a lot of residents that are personally affected and are waiting for this, that we can try to maybe expedite a little bit, or is it?
So if I may, through the chair to council, if you would like to talk to the MLA of the area, that might be a avenue to go down. From administration and our side, we have a case manager that was appointed to Woodlands County and Yellowhead County. So it's one case manager for both areas, and they are in communications with myself on a daily email thread. But we again, it's up to the GOA to come back.
Like I said, I do know, I have had conversations
Yep.
with him all day long, and I know that he's been kind of championing this in the background also, because it affects, multiple municipalities also that he represents. So I do know that he has been working on this. Councillor Dean?
Just a question through to Sheldon. Is the application for disaster relief that we submitted to the province, does it cover both fire and flood, or are they separate?
They are separate,
Separate.
sir. Yes, we had to do 2 of them.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Burrows?
Yeah, just the, through the chair to Sheldon, the, stupid brain. I can only have one idea at a time, the other ones just fall out of it.
DRP.
Yeah, the DRP, but this is, I guess, more than anything, when we talk about this application process in this 18 months, that might be part of the resolution that we're looking at as well. If Joan is listening, because we, again, this 18-month I know they need to leave some room, but give me a break.
Yeah, it's sorry, through the chair to Councillor Burrows. It's an unfortunate thing that happens, but I do agree that the sooner we applied with our application, the sooner we're in the queue. It would be just like Yellowhead County or Greenview, right?
So
go ahead.
I was just going to ask too, which ministry would this be through?
Municipal Affairs.
It's Municipal Affairs? Are we talking to Municipal Affairs again yet?
Would be,
Your worship, members of council, we've talked to several individuals, including I can put in a call to the deputy minister or the assistant deputy minister, Mr. Sandberg, to see if there's any progress happened. Again, I know that that's not part of his portfolio, but
we
still
also
have
do
that
have
conversation.
RMA coming up in a couple months too. If there's some way that we can possibly start making those connections early, to have a sit down with Minister McIver.
I know your worship, members of council, I've also talked to 3 out of the 4 municipalities that, CAOs that have been affected by the flood. The only one, the individual I haven't talked to is the town of Edson, and we can reach out to see if there's some strategy in regards to doing it as a delegation. Yeah.
Anything else, Councillor Burrows?
No, that's it for me.
Anything from council to Councillor Burrows? Right, for me, same thing, through summer hasn't been as busy. Did have a quick meeting with our former mayor, Mr. Rennie, with the Northern Alberta leader or elected officials, just kind of a rundown on where they're at. They're same thing, a lot of rural communities looking at trying to find ways to attract doctors and healthcare, and healthcare retention is kind of one of the bigger things they said they've been working on. We did have the meeting with Wes Fraser, the administration stuff. One thing that came out of that I would like at some point for administration to kind of bring back to us is a plan for the hamlet of Blue Ridge. They have lots of ideas on kind of ways that we can try to grow or try to bring investment in to make Blue Ridge grow into kind of more of like a bedroom community for the town of Whitecourt. But the hamlet itself, the way I look at it, there's not really a whole lot of rhyme or reason for kind of where things are and how things are placed. And I would like to, at either a GNP or a council meeting or something in the future when we have time, but at least have a look at what the plan is for Blue Ridge and how it's how it's set out, how it's laid out. Maybe we can start giving it some type of direction that we can put to investors that, if we had something, I guess, advertise it in a way that we can kind of put it forward, I think would help.
Your worship, members of council, that now that the Blue Ridge Briar Patch has been demolished and that area is now potentially available for development, we are considering it for the 2024 budget. Again, it'll make the list whether or not it gets approved as council.
like you say, it'd just be nice to have like a vision for that hamlet, cause I just don't feel that that's there. Go ahead, John.
Through our municipal development plan review, which will be coming for the council this fall, is what we've, put in the MDP, is that we would like to do area structure plans for each of our hamlets, which would address that. Of course, then there's the budgetary, there's a area structure plan, can cost anywhere from, depending on which consultant we retain to do it and how in-depth you wanna get, anywhere from $40,000 to $100,000. So, but it is part of the MDP that we're suggesting that those kinds of items be done for the hamlets themselves. I know we've had a lot of interest here at Fort Simpson as well, you know, and what could be done. But there's really no direction right now as to the layout. So, yeah.
Yeah, no,
It's on-
thank
it's on
you
the
very
road.
much. The end of our last council meeting, we did have an MPC meeting, just really quick, a couple items kind of come out of that. And one thing, it kind of fell in the middle of our last council meeting, but we did have the meet and greet with a couple RMA members. And just want to touch on that quick. It was nice having to sit down with them and discussion and kind of, I guess, being able to talk one-on-one with a lot of the issues that we're seeing in our rural area versus what they're seeing from communications from other municipalities around them too, and being able to just, you know, have that voice heard. I know the RMA, especially the directors and stuff there, get inundated with a lot of responses and a lot of ideas, but being able to sit down and at least, you know, have those one-on-one discussions and kind of see where we can help maybe move the meter on a couple different things, you know, issues across the province that affect everybody. It's always nice having that and building those relationships. So, with that, any discussion or any other questions from council? Can I get Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll motion the council accepts the council reports and questions as information.
Hey, motion on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. See, lunch is here. Break till 1 o'clock. I work for administration.
Yep, your worship, that's fine.
Okay, we'll take a break till 1 o'clock. Come back after lunch break there. Nikita, just let me know when we're off. Oh, 1 o'clock here right away. We are ready to go. All right, it's 1 o'clock and we're back. Andre's not here, so we'll start 10.3 financial reports, July 2023.
Your worship, I want to premise my comments is I prepared this with the help of Lan. Lan was unable to attend. So if there are any specific questions that I can answer, I do have the detail information, but I would take the question down and get council or answer it by email to council. So, your worship, members of council, this is your monthly financial report as of end of July. Basically, most of the taxes are in. Again, with the understanding that they become a receivable at the end of the year, and we'll have a report on actual collection, whether it's 98% or I think it's closer to 99% collection of this year. We have a number of other oil companies that have entered into tax arrangement agreements too, so they're paying us on a monthly basis, and so you'll see that amount being collected go up over time and be reduced over time. Expenditures, we're in our full capital cycle. As noted, you you see some of the capital items, just to your east, is being, finished off. And, and the emergency fund have also been allocated in this budget. This report.
Councillor Wilhelm?
The Chair to Administration, I don't see anything too crazy in here other than, see residential dust controls about 400% over budget. Is that just a higher request for dust control than in previous years?
Your worship, members of council through to Councillor Wilhelm, if you look in the revenue column, there's, I believe it's $23,000 that has been provided by the residents for that. So you have to offset that cost associated with it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Anything else from council? Seeing none, anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll motion that council accepts the financial reports for July 2023 as information.
Motion on the floor, any discussion? See none, call the question, all in favor? It's carried. Let's go back up to 10.2, Mr. Bichon, the 2023 infrastructure status report.
Your worship, members, council attached are the August operating and capital infrastructure projects. I'd just like to point out that ANC Road should be finished paving end of today, early tomorrow. They'll be moving to the Blue Ridge Road, which should be completed by Friday. The roof on the airport water plant is complete. The sand salt sheds, the one here in the fort, the cover is on. The electrical will be completed next week. As of last week, they informed us that the overhead doors would be middle of September. Supply chain issue, but when I went out for lunch, the overhead door guy was there, and they're going to be finished installing tomorrow. So that's moving along. White quartz sand salt shed structure, the skeleton is up. They should be getting the cover on tomorrow. That one should be finished middle of September. The hard luck stairs, as I mentioned previously, we were having issues with our consultant. We've switched consultants. The anticipation was that that project would take place in September into October. That is unlikely to happen at this point. It will most likely be a spring project. Get it done before the main tourist season happens. The consultants are also working on the Old Ferry and Cut Banks from the high water event. As mentioned, we'll be doing a temporary solution in anticipation of some type of permanent repair, leaning most likely towards moving both roads. That will be dependent on that funding being approved through the DRP, and if not, if we know by 2024 budget season, it will form part of the budget deliberations. Any questions on either the operating or the capital?
From council? We went up once here, Councillor Poulin, work my way around the table.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit curious about Horse Creek Road, because you said the contractors complete culvert ends, lead culvert, completed the brushing and milling. Well, I left a message with your office on the 8th of August, and on the south side, on the west end of Horse Creek Road, the contractor did the brushing, crushed the stuff, crushed the culverts. The culverts are not cleaned out. It's resulted in massive flooding into the field there because the water cannot get into the drainage way. And, I know that is not something that the county did, but the contractor did it and it hasn't been addressed.
Yes, through Chair Councilor Kogan, I apologize, I thought I replied to your email on that, but regardless, we did point it out, the contractor will be doing those repairs on that culvert.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a timeline on that possibly, when he's gonna be coming to remediate that?
We anticipate that job will be completed to mid-September, so sometime in there.
Councillor Wilhelm?
I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were having up. Councillor Dean?
Excuse me, through the chair to Andre, I see you note that work continues on Range Road 593A, but it's been raining. Last time I looked, there was no equipment on there and things are pretty dry. Do we have a timeline of when the equipment's gonna get back to resurface that?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, equipment is on site today.
Okay.
We are hauling gravel today.
Okay. And
My
what
guess
is,
is by the end of the week, actually, by the end of today, they should be able to access their driveway.
okay,
And by the end of the week, we'll be pretty close to done on that portion of road.
including like the turnaround or whatever, the access? What's the word I'm looking for?
To their driveway,
Yeah,
they've built their driveway up to the road allowance.
okay,
So, once, we are complete, our portion, then we will
okay.
go
Tie
ahead.
it in,
We'll tie into the property line.
thanks.
Councillor Burrows?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair to Andre. The airport, I noticed you've got a fuel supply RFP to be let out by the end of August. Is that an exclusive, fuel supply? Cause I know back in, a while ago when we were talking about that, there was something about the airport, the RFP being exclusive. No one else would be able to sell fuel in the airport.
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, exclusive meaning supplying anyone else that has fuel on site? Is that what you mean?
Well, you're the only retailer.
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, on that, we're basically tackling two fronts. Our legal people are reviewing a bylaw that council can pass, identifying that if, let's say the Air Club sells fuel, that they would be required to give the county the levy that anyone else is gonna have to pay. So they would still be able to sell fuel, but they would have to pay the county the levy.
And just to follow up on that, so would the levy count for internal fuel as well? So any of the operators that are out there fueling their own aircraft, they're paying that fuel levy as well?
Through the chair, no. So if you have a plane, you have a tank, you don't pay a levy, but if you sell fuel to somebody, you pay the levy.
Not the way the flowage usually works at an airport, but okay.
And I should point out that we don't have that legal opinion back yet, but if, that's the way we are approaching it, but if we are unable to do that, then it will be, the fuel system is available 24/7, no one can sell fuel. Other than the fuel truck that goes on the runway, then they would have to pay the flowage to the county.
Are we gonna get a copy of the RFP?
Not likely.
Okay.
Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair to Andre, on the piece of road that's getting rebuilt there at Blue Ridge, I put you in contact with the developer that's doing that subdivision. And you told him that you were gonna put a culvert in his driveway.
Yes.
Still no culvert, and what they did was they back ditched it back to the culvert that crosses the road. And if that's all we're gonna do, then have we explained it to the developer? That's what we're doing, and if it is, maybe a letter to him saying that when he does build his road, he doesn't need a culvert?
Through the chair to Councillor Prestige, I did see that this morning when it came through. I was off yesterday, so when I get back to the office, I'll be making some calls.
So we are gonna go with the culvert then.
I will talk to our consultants and see what their intention was.
Okay, if they're not gonna do a culvert, can you please inform the resident that he doesn't need it?
We will.
Just to, I guess, address the fuel supply RFP, is it possible when that gets out, if I can email to council also, just for us to take a look at?
Certainly.
Thank you.
We'll inform council. It'll be on our website.
Okay. Anything else from council? Seeing none, that's everything, Mr. Bashan?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Prestige?
I'll make a motion that council accepts the August 2023 infrastructure status report as information.
Okay, motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? See none, call the question. All in favor? It's passed. All right, service tracker monthly report, July 2023. So you, Mr. Frank?
Your worship, members of council, the report is in front of you. If there's any direct questions, I know a number of requests from the previous year are down, but that, again, is depending on individuals using the system, so.
Anybody see any here? Want to ask a question or comment? Councilor Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. True to Andre, not necessarily related to this service tracker report, this specific one, but can you comment on those binding products that you guys were gonna use on some of the problematic areas?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, some comment, we haven't done it.
Oh, yeah.
Given the
Strain on
emergencies
resources.
we've been dealing with in
Okay.
the rain.
Okay. Fall for next year.
At this point in time, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from council? See anybody want to make a motion? Councilor Burrows?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council accepts the monthly service director report as information for June 2023.
Okay, just one question to administration, just noticed on here, the topic says service tracker monthly report July 2023, recommendation says June 2023.
That's an error. Wait, it's July. We just,
Did I say June? I did say June.
Okay, well, that's what I
Read
thought.
read
yeah,
amended
and
in July.
we take the last RFD and update it, and we just must have missed the JU.
The motion should be July 2023.
I'll amend my motion, Mr. Chair, to say July 2022. 23.
We're getting there. Okay, motion on the floor to accept the service tracker monthly report July 2023 is information. Any question or comments on that? I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Mr. Frank, CAO report.
Your worship, again, like council, not a whole lot in regards to, I know that mentioned we, administration, along with the Reeve and the chair of the Economic Development Committee, met with West Fraser. We are now scheduling our oil and gas industry individuals for the fall in regards to that. There is like mentioned previously, for the governance and priority, we have a number of HR policies that will be coming to council in those. And then I am on holidays from September 7th to 17th. I'm back on the 18th. So Andre has graciously agreed to be the acting CAO. And that's all I have here.
I got a couple, and then I'll get to council. Just a couple things. Have we heard anything as far as an update on the judicial review yet?
And no, your worship, anticipated if there was going to be a decision, it would have been before the end of June. Typically, judges will take the summer off and work on their submissions, and we anticipate something in September or October, so that we knew that if it wasn't coming in the end of June, we're not going to get it until September or October.
Next one for our CAO, if possible, at one of our meetings in September, I'd like to have a legal update on the airport matters.
Yep.
And out of one, I can't remember, it was our last council meeting, but we had asked about a subcommittee for a tax policy. I just haven't seen anything kind of come up. I'm not sure where that's coming.
Yeah, so again, Victoria's on holiday, so I'll check with her and when we get back. That was regarding the policy that she presented to council, yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Coogan?
I was just the judicial review question I had.
Any, Councillor Burrows?
Just a transcript of the judicial review, did we ever request one?
The answer is no, and again, I've never asked the lawyer, we can probably get one, yeah.
If we could, there was a couple comments came out of there that we want to bring up with Minister of Municipal Affairs. So. Anything else from council? See none. Anybody willing to make a Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll motion that council accepts the CAO report and information.
A motion on the floor. I'll ask a question. All in favor? All right, that's carried. That takes us to our last one on the agenda. Councillor Wilhelm.
I'll motion to go into committee of the whole, section 19.
That. We have a motion on the floor to go into committee of the whole.
Your worship, just to let the audience know that you'll come out of closed session, but you won't stream, because the rest of the staff are all leaving.
Okay. Yeah, we will, when we come out of closed session, the stream will be down. You just have to note that in minutes. So there is a motion on the floor to go into closed session in the committee of the whole. I'll call the question. All in favor? It is passed. We are going into committee of the whole at 1:19.